7:02 a.m. Washington, D.C. The envelope sat on Jasmine Crockett's desk like a loaded pistol. Heavy stock paper, gold-embossed seal, no return address. It didn't ask. It commanded. Her chief of staff hovered by the window, shifting nervously. Should I open it? Crockett didn't answer. She reached for the envelope herself, sliced it cleanly with a letter opener, and unfolded the contents. The air in the office tightened, the early morning light slicing sterile beams across her desk. She read silently, her fingertips tensed by the third line. Subject: immediate summons to special judicial inquiry. Presiding authority: Justice Amy Coney Barrett. A whisper broke from the corner. That can't be real. Jasmine placed the letter down with surgical precision. It's not just real, she said, voice cold. It's strategic. Her staffer stepped closer. But a Supreme Court justice calling in a sitting congresswoman for questioning? That's not oversight. That's intimidation. Jasmine stood, adjusting her navy blazer. This isn't oversight. This is a warning shot. She moved to the window. Outside, D.C. stirred awake. Buses sighed. Joggers pounded sidewalks. But inside that room, time held its breath. She spoke without looking back. They're not just trying to question me. They're trying to erase me. No cameras, no press. Just a summons dressed in civility and weaponized like a bayonet. The room stayed silent. No one asked if she would attend. They already knew the answer. 9:12 a.m., Courtroom 5. C. Federal Judicial Building, Washington, D.C. The courtroom looked less like a hall of justice and more like an operating room. Sterile white walls, no windows, fluorescent lights so harsh they peeled warmth off skin. Every footstep echoed too long, every cough felt illegal. Jasmine Crockett entered without ceremony, no entourage, no reporters, only a handful of silent, sharp-eyed aides lining the back wall. Her heels clicked crisply on the marble floor, each step a quiet refusal to cower. She sat at the single, lonely witness table. Across the room, the judge's bench loomed, an altar of cold authority carved in unyielding stone. Then she arrived. Justice Amy Coney Barrett glided into the room like a drawn curtain. Black robes immaculate, expression unreadable. She did not glance at Crockett. She didn't have to. Her presence suffocated the room without a word. The bailiff called the room to order. No cameras, no public feed, no recording devices allowed. Only whispered assumptions and sharpened glances filled the sterile air. Behind Crockett, her legal advisor leaned close. Noticed the extra security, 2 federal marshals by each exit. Jasmine nodded once, barely. She thought, this isn't protection, it's containment. Justice Barrett cleared her throat and spoke. This proceeding will assess whether Representative Crockett has engaged in conduct unbecoming a member of Congress, compromising the dignity of the judiciary through public commentary and subversive rhetoric. Her voice was velvet over steel. Jasmine sat straighter. Subversive rhetoric, she thought. In Washington, that's just called breathing. The prosecutor stood, slim, sharp-suited, with eyes that gleamed not with curiosity, but with quiet menace. He shuffled his papers theatrically, letting the silence stretch thin and sharp. And then, "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, "you are here today because the institution you serve believes words matter. Let's discuss yours." The trap had been sprung, the stage was set, and Jasmine Crockett was ready to rewrite the script. 9:31 a.m. Courtroom 5. C. The prosecutor circled the table slowly, like a shark savoring a trapped swimmer. He projected a blown-up screenshot behind Crockett, a tweet from last summer. "You posted, and I quote," he intoned, "procedure is how the powerful buy time while truth bleeds out." He let the silence bleed too, just long enough to feel weaponized. "Were you referring," he asked, voice sharpening, "to the judiciary?" Crockett's voice came cool and clear. I was referring to systems where process is prioritized over people. If the shoe fits, counselor, lace it up. A few coughs muffled chuckles from the gallery. Barrett's gavel dropped once, an audible warning. The prosecutor pressed on. You also said in a podcast that justice in America often plays dress-up. Do you understand how statements like that erode faith in our courts? Crockett leaned forward, eyes unblinking. Faith built on silence is not justice, it's compliance. Justice Barrett's lips tightened. She interrupted. The witness will refrain from editorializing. Crockett didn't flinch. Truth doesn't require an editor, Your Honor. The atmosphere thickened. The air felt loaded. Every answer Crockett gave was a defiance written in measured syllables. Every question they asked was a rope they hoped she would hang herself with. But she wasn't swinging. She was building. 10:14 a.m. The prosecutor's frustration boiled beneath his polished exterior. He threw up another tweet. This one showed Crockett retweeting an article that criticized Barrett's own dissent in a reproductive rights case. By amplifying this, he said, were you not directly undermining the integrity of this court? Crockett's voice sharpened to a blade. Amplifying critique is not an attack. It's participation in democracy. Barrett's hand twitched near the gavel. Congresswoman, Barrett said, voice clipped, you are approaching contempt. Crockett straightened her shoulders. Respectfully, Your Honor, contempt isn't proximity, it's action. The prosecutor lunged for the final blow. Do you believe Justice Barrett is capable of presiding over this matter impartially? The courtroom held its breath. Crockett's answer was a scalpel. I believe no proceeding is impartial when the judge has more at stake than the witness. Barrett's gavel slammed down, a crack of marble and fury. The witness is held in contempt of court. A ripple of gasps rolled through the courtroom. Crockett remained seated, unbowed. You can hold me in contempt, she said, voice even, but you cannot hold back the questions you're afraid to answer. Security moved, but the room itself moved first, not physically, emotionally. The audience shifted, 100 unspoken protests, 100 silent cameras rising in trembling hands. History wasn't waiting to be made. It was already happening. 10:26 a.m., Courtroom 5C. The order was barely given before security surged toward Jasmine Crockett. But the room had already shifted. Phones shot up. Boots scuffed backward. Voices rose, not in screams but in murmurs, fast and sharp, like electricity cracking the air. Crockett stood, not cowering, not pleading. She adjusted her blazer and faced the bench directly. You can drag me out of here, she said, voice cutting through the noise, but you can't drag the truth with me. 2 federal marshals flanked her, cautious but tense, and then it happened. Justice Amy Coney Barrett, in an unprecedented move, rose from her elevated bench. Her robe caught the edge of the dais, snagging briefly. She stumbled forward, not a fall, but enough to snap the illusion of invincibility. One of the security guards, interpreting the stumble as an escalating threat, instinctively moved to secure the area. In a span of heartbeats, a federal marshal placed a hand, lightly but unmistakably, on Justice Barrett's arm. Gasps. Phones flashed. For a moment frozen in marble and fear, it looked like the Supreme Court justice was being escorted, removed, by her own security detail. Chaos wasn't breaking the room, it was reordering it. Barrett jerked her arm free and barked something unintelligible at the marshal. The bailiff, wide-eyed, slammed his gavel trying to regain control, but it was too late. Someone had already uploaded a 30-second clip. It hit Twitter before the courthouse doors even opened. Caption: Did they just drag out Barrett? #bench bias. Outside the courthouse, reporters who hadn't been allowed in scrambled like vultures sensing blood. Inside, the air cracked again, not from shouting but from a collective realization. The seal had broken. No one could put it back. 1:42 p.m. Washington, D.C. A burner account with 0 followers posted a 7-minute video. No caption, no commentary, just raw courtroom audio. At 3:07 in the clip, Justice Barrett could be heard whispering off mic to the prosecutor. Push her on the impartiality question. Frame it as a disruption if she bites. No one moved. At 5:14, another fragment. Clear, damning. Contain her narrative before she reaches outside these walls. The hashtags detonated. #benchbias, #courtroom conspiracy, #Barrett. Cover up. Within 40 minutes, the video had 2 million views. By evening, anchors at CNN and MSNBC played the footage in slow motion like analysts dissecting a crime scene. Commentators, normally cautious, used words like orchestration, weaponized judicial authority, deliberate silencing. Former federal judges, names rarely heard outside law journals, broke ranks and demanded an emergency ethics review. Barrett's spokesperson issued a sterile statement. Justice Barrett has always upheld the integrity of her office. But integrity had already become a punchline. By nightfall, a mural appeared outside the courthouse. It showed Crockett's silhouette, standing against a crumbling marble wall, words painted above her. You can silence a voice. You can't silence a truth. The system hadn't just cracked. It had broadcast its own undoing. 5:15 p.m. across America. It began with the law schools. By 6 p.m., Harvard, Stanford, and Howard law students had organized emergency walkouts. Their signs read, "Justice isn't silence. Truth needs no permission." By 7 p.m., students at Columbia projected the leaked video onto the side of their library. 30 feet tall, undeniable. Journalists scrambled. Former judges tweeted cryptic lines. When a robe protects power instead of truth, the robe has failed. Cable news anchors tried to keep up, but the story was moving faster than the spin machines. At a community college in Atlanta, a civics professor threw out the day's lesson plan and played Crockett's courtroom standoff on loop. At Howard University, a crowd of 200 students gathered in the main quad chanting, "Silence is complicity," until campus police politely backed down. By 8:30 p.m., Marcus Hill, a community advocate whose past defense by Crockett had barely made local news, recorded a short, shattering video. 6 years ago, when they tried to erase me, Jasmine Crockett stood beside me. No camera, no headlines, just truth. Now it's our turn. We stand with her. The video hit 1.2 million views in under an hour. The White House press secretary was cornered during a routine briefing. Reporter: "Does the administration believe that judicial authority was weaponized today?" The press secretary paused, smiled thinly. No comment. America didn't need a comment. It already had a verdict. 10:06 p.m. outside the federal courthouse, no podium, no press banner, no prepared remarks. Just a single mic stand and Jasmine Crockett, standing in the evening mist, her navy coat heavy on her shoulders. The cameras didn't flash. They listened. She spoke. "I was summoned today not for misconduct but for inconvenience." She adjusted the mic, her hands steady. When power fears a voice, it doesn't debate it. It tries to disappear it. She paused, letting the cold air carry her words. But disappearance only works when people let it. From somewhere in the silent crowd, someone whispered, "We're not letting it." Crockett continued, her voice unwavering. "I did not come here to disrupt. I came here to bear witness." She glanced at the marble courthouse behind her. If asking questions is a threat, then the threat was already in the foundation. She smiled then, small, tired, unbroken. You can try to script silence. You can choreograph intimidation, but you cannot choreograph a conscience. A low rumble moved through the crowd. Not a cheer. Something older, something heavier. Crockett stepped back. She lifted the mic from the stand, holding it like a torch. Her last words were barely above a whisper, but the microphones caught them. They tried to take my voice. Instead, they gave it a nation. She walked away. No fist raised, no grand finale. Just a woman moving forward, leaving the broken script behind her. 7:48 a.m., Washington, D.C. The Federal Judicial Review Panel convened behind locked doors. No cameras, no leaks, only whispers and trembling inboxes. By 10:32 a.m., Politico broke the first headline. Sources: review panel alarmed by Barrett footage. By noon, C-SPAN cut regular programming. Ticker flashing, emergency ruling pending. Inside the courthouse, clerks traded words like contraband. She didn't break the law, the court broke its reflection. At 2:46 p.m., the ruling dropped. 5 paragraphs, 1 earthquake. There was no disruption, only principled dissent. The contempt charge was vacated. Justice Amy Coney Barrett was formally removed from any further proceedings involving Representative Crockett. A bipartisan congressional letter followed within hours, signed by 36 members, condemning the weaponization of judicial proceedings for political ends. No apology from Barrett. No explanation. Just silence. The kind that doesn't come from dignity. The kind that smells like fear. 1 week later. No victory parades. No late-night interviews. Jasmine Crockett returned to her district. Folding chairs, handshakes, community centers. At a town hall, a young girl, no older than 9, raised her hand and asked, "Was it worth it?" Crockett paused, pulled a folded copy of the Judicial Review ruling from her bag, highlighted, annotated, worn like a battle map. "It's not about whether I was right," she said quietly. "It's about what happens when no one dares to be." In New York, a mural went up overnight. Crockett's face, half in shadow, half in sunrise. Captioned, "They tried to erase her. Instead, they outlined her in light." At law schools across the country, students recited her words before final exams. At rallies from Oakland to Atlanta, kids wore shirts that said, "Hold your spine." Marcus Hill's video became mandatory viewing in high school civics classes in 17 states. Federal judges began drafting internal memos to redefine courtroom decorum standards. One judge, anonymous but pointed, wrote, "We wear robes not to shield ourselves, but to remind ourselves who we serve." In a way no one scripted, no one could contain. The silence that once held power now echoed differently, not as obedience, but as a reminder. When silence is enforced, speech becomes sacred, and when power demands quiet, courage becomes louder. Forever.